All right, so we are on our property here, and this is where the home site is gonna go. In this back clearing over here, it's about 100 feet deep into the property. But recently, we ran into somewhat of a major issue. Somebody, who shall remain nameless over here, fired our architect. And now we are starting from scratch. Hey guys, welcome back to Mini Urban Farm, a channel about gardening and homesteading in the suburbs. So we have never worked with an architect before, and I gotta say that was probably the absolute worst experience we could have had. So we went with this architect that was actually recommended to us by a friend, of a neighbor, or something like that. And we did do a little bit of research on him ahead of time, like he has some sort of a license, you know, that sort of thing. But we should have done significantly more due diligence and taken a few of these super important warning signs before hiring him and continuing to work with him. So here is going to be our tips for working with an architect if you're trying to build a home from scratch or a property of any type. These are our best tips that we have learned the hard way.
So number one is going to be do your research. Make sure that you Google the heck out of them. Look at reviews, look at experience, look at background, check Angie's List and see if they show up on sites like that.
Yeah. Look up their business license, right? Like on whatever state you're in, there should be a license of every business, or there should be a register of every business license. Make sure that theirs is not only on there, but that it's still valid, right? And they are up to date with their licenses. Correct. Yeah, that they have a website. Not all architects are going to have a website. I get that, but you know, it's just something like another entry point of trust. Do whatever research you can, and then when you do meet them in person, make sure they sound like they know what they're talking about.
Ask questions, right? Like do your research and know your property. Get a feel for some of the things that you should be asking. And if anything sounds off or weird by chance, certainly question it. Even calling the county. We had a couple situations where we called the county to get some information, and the architect was telling us something different. So we knew right away something was off.
Yeah, so do your research on like the type of things that they should be talking to you about, and ask the questions like in the initial meeting with them or via email. Have your set of questions and make sure that they can actually give you legitimate responses to those questions. All right, so number 2 is do your research on permitting, right? Like what do you need to submit to the county or the city or whatever it is to actually get this house built? Because if you need certain documents and the architect has no idea what you're talking about, that is probably a problem. All right, make sure you have a list. Usually the county has like a permitting list, you know, of everything that you need to submit, a packet of some sort, and you will need to submit those items if you hope to get your house through permitting. So make sure you have that list, you know what you're talking about, and ask the architect or the draftsperson or whatever it is about specific items that need to go to permitting. And it's so much more convenient if that person has worked in that county and gotten things through the permitting process. They'll be way more familiar with that whole process.
You should be able to get it online. You can go in person and just make sure, because the last thing you want to do is work with an architect that tells you, hey, this is what I'm including, and you think that's what you need, and then once you pay for everything and you're all done, you go to the builder, you find out, hey, I actually need these other sets of documents, and that's going to cost me an extra several $1,000s. Yeah. Try to avoid that at all possible.
Make sure that whatever is on that permitting list is also on the list of things that the architect includes in his final drawings.
His breakdown.
Yeah, in his breakdown. Make sure that that is something you are already paying for, because if it's not, right, and you need XYZ documents to get through permitting and he has not included that as something you paid for, you will have to pay extra for that document from him, or you will have to go to somebody else to get that document, and that's more money that you're spending. Not only that, but it's going to be a headache when you find out that you thought you paid for everything that you needed and reality is that you didn't. All right, so next up is to ask super detailed questions, right? Like when you meet with them in person for the initial meeting, what is it that you need to know? Those include things like their turnaround time. Are they going to be responsive, right? You may not be able to ask them if they're going to be responsive. Of course, they're going to say yes. But if you are, noticing that you're having issues with the responsiveness at this point, it is not going to get better, I promise you. So cut your losses while you're ahead and just keep moving.
Duplication of effort. If you're asking for the same thing over and over and over again and they forget to put it in, or they have an excuse.
What are their exact policies, right? Like if they have no written down policies, if they can't give you a contract with specifics in it, then that's definitely something to be concerned about.
Red flag.
Red flag, run fast, which is exactly what we should have done. What is their turnaround time for getting revisions back? How many revisions are included? If they say they're only allowing you 3 revisions, but every single time that you ask for a revision, they don't include everything, then it is going to be a problem, which is exactly what happened to us. You know, they said three revisions included, and then every time that we went back to them and said, hey, here are our revisions, they would return work, and none of those revisions, or very few of them, were actually in that work. So we had to go back and forth like 100 times, so many times, and so much rework and time wasted. And then they were getting frustrated because it was significantly more than 3 revisions, but we were getting frustrated because none of that stuff was in there. Know their policies ahead of time, know exactly how they're handling things, and exactly what your recourse is if it's not going well. So that brings me to the next one: know the fee schedule, which know exactly how you're getting charged. Basically, are you getting charged by the foot, which is something that a lot of architects do, right? It's going to be $2.50 per square foot of the house, which is a common thing that we've been quoted a lot, between $2 and $3 a square foot. Or is it something like, they're going to bill you on an hourly basis, X amount of dollars per hour, and they submit an invoice for 1,000 hours and you have to pay it? How exactly are you getting charged? Are you getting charged at the beginning of the project, half and half? We put down a deposit of $2,000 now and $2,000 later, or whatever the case is. Are you getting charged at the very end of the project, or are you getting charged as they complete the work? So if they complete 10 hours, then you are responsible for paying them every single month for whatever hours they complete. All of these are things that we've heard in several quotes. Just know how it is that you're actually going to be paying this money, and make sure you're okay with that right off the bat.
Be careful on the hourly rate, because if it's just focused on hourly, they could spin their wheels and charge for hourly time that could have been basically used and abused. So if you have an hourly rate, maybe have a cap on it.
Yeah.
Say no more than X amount of dollars total for the hourly rate. Things like that, just so you know that even if it's an hourly rate, you have a max.
Yeah. So since Alan decided to, not out of the blue, but kind of out of the blue, there were some words said.
Some exchanges.
I
won. Yeah.
I don't know if you won, but okay. Some of the right. So not completely out of the blue, but since we had to find a new architect out of the blue, we have since found a separate architect, a different architect, and we're working with him, and it is significantly better, like just 1,000% better. So the way that we are being charged now is an hourly rate with a not to exceed of X per square foot. So if it goes above the X dollars per square foot, then it is going to be that amount, no more than that. Which I think is a really good way if you have like fewer revisions like we did, right? Because we already have more or less an idea of exactly what we want. And so this new architect is pretty much working off of that. And it's going to be a lot less work than the original time around.
And it could be less than the not to exceed number because of the hourly rate.
Yeah.
So he's taking both into account.
Exactly. So just know how you're being charged and make sure you're okay with that, basically. All right. Next up is to be as clear and concise as possible. You want to make sure you can provide photos. You can provide not only just like number of bedrooms and bathrooms, but what
Sample
direction.
Layout.
Sample layouts.
Try to draw your own layout.
Go on Pinterest, go on Google, look at the elevations of the house. You want windows in every room, these type of windows, that type of windows. Be as detailed as you can. If you can draw out something, even if it's
driveways, layouts, patios.
If you can draw out something, for reference, that was a good way to get started. That has saved us so much time, just by, kind of getting an idea of what we want so they can jump off of that. Because if you come in and let the architect do whatever they want and design it, you might not be happy with exactly what you're getting, which means that you're going to have to go back and do so many more revisions, and that is going to add to your bottom line fee. So know what you want, have pictures, send them as many details as you can possibly send them. It will help you out in the long run.
Surveys as well. So if you have a survey and you know where the house is going to be, if it's a flood zone, they can take elevations into account and account for any stem walls or anything like that.
Yeah, which is the next one, know your property, right? So if you know your house needs to go in a certain place, you should know the elevations of that. You should know if it's a flood zone. You should know,
what trees you got to take out,
grading, that sort of thing. So we actually had somewhat of an issue with this one because we do know our property pretty well, actually. We know we're in a flood zone. We know the kind of grading. And they came back and had one iteration of the floor plans had steps, right? So if you have grading, then you don't need the steps because you're grading the land, and you don't need then steps to get to the house. That's kind of the purpose of grading. So there was an iteration of the floor plan, and magically there were steps involved. So we went back and asked them, and they said we had asked for that and it was a whole big thing, but basically somewhere along the line, one of the team members that they were working with decided to put them in there and didn't ask us. Nobody said anything. And so that was something that was just a catastrophe. Know exactly what it is that you need out of the property and have a basic understanding of like, okay, it's going to be facing this way or facing that way. Like just know your property, I guess is the bottom line. That way when the architect or, you know, designer or whoever it is, draftsman, puts other things that you don't need, you can question them and fix it. All right, and the last one is know when to back out. So I think this is something that we did not know, and we pretty much, well, yes, it just happened, but we should have taken this into consideration significantly before we did. If you're seeing all of these red flags, if they're making a whole bunch of mistakes, if they're not doing what you as a client are paying them to do, if you're just not having a fun experience overall, cut your losses and just move on, because at the end of the day, the refund policy that we didn't actually know was in place, and we just kind of made an agreement with him that they would not charge us for the work as long as we did not have anything to do with that layout, right? So we basically had to start from scratch. We still have an idea of what we wanted, and we had my original drawings, which we were able to work off of with the new architect, but at the end of the day, we weren't able to use any of his drawings that had already been, 3 or 4 months in the making. Like, we spent a lot of time working with the architect, and at the end of the day, I mean, we had to abandon it all. So know the refund policy. Like, if you pay for things up front, are they yours? Who do they belong to? Where did the drawings go if you decide to back out? Even if you get a good vibe from him, like, make sure you know what the back out policy is. And are you going to get your money back? We're very, very lucky that we got our money back, and we just had to start from scratch. But if you are working with an architect, that might not always be the case, and you don't want to have to pay for something that you're ultimately not going to be able to use. So know the refund policy. All right, so that is our tips on working with an architect. We are currently working with a different architect, and we considered all of these things before getting involved with this person. I will say it has gone much better, 100% smoother, and we are actually almost at the point of time that we are finalizing our plans to go to the structural engineer. I think today actually we made the very last revisions. I think they're sitting in our inbox right now. We have to go look at them actually, so very excited, and we are going to start building soon on this property, which is a huge goal that we have had. So if you want to follow along with that journey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.